Hello, my friends. Welcome back to another episode of Life After Therapy. And guess what? This month is the 1-year anniversary of my podcast. I didn't even know. I went downstairs and my husband turned to me and said, "Happy birthday." I'm like, "My birthday's in September. I have no idea what you're talking about." And he said, "No, happy birthday. It's March. Didn't you start your podcast last March?" And I thought, you're right. I did. I started my podcast March of last year. And I just felt this hope, this light, this excitement about the possibilities of what a year's worth of this podcast has done in the world. I know it's done so much for me. It's helped me learn and grow because every time I teach you, I'm totally learning the same things myself. But also, I've had woman after woman text me, email me, reach out to me, and tell me that something that I said helped them be brave, helped them heal, helped them move forward. And yes, I do my best to open my mouth and let it be filled by what God wants me to share, but truly, it's you I want to celebrate. I want to celebrate that you show up for yourself and listen. You want new information. You want to learn and grow and find more of that light. Thank you for showing up for yourself this year. And I want more of that for the women of this world. So will you do me a quick favor? I can't get to everybody out there, but you have people in your circle that need this message, that could have a little bit more light in their life if you shared it with them. So if you'll take just a moment and text somebody today and share one of your favorite episodes, I would sure appreciate that. It would also help my podcast if you just quickly rate it and maybe put a few words of how it's helped you. That tells the podcast platforms like Spotify and Apple that you like it. And then it shows it to more people and it gets the word out there. So if you could do that for me today as a happy birthday of the podcast, I would sure appreciate that, my friend. But not for me, for the women of this world that could use more light. We want that together, you, me, and the other people who are listening. Thank you for being part of that community. Every time I interact with one of you, it adds so much value to my life. One of the things I've been grateful for lately is experiencing that community in a course that I'm doing. There's a group of women that started with me a few weeks ago, and we've built this community where we're talking things out. We are messaging each other in between sessions. They have a group coaching call we do every Friday, and they are showing up with courage, vulnerability, a lot of humanity, and practicing self-love along the way. One of the women after a session shared this with our group. She said, "At the very end of our Zoom call yesterday, I had the thought, these ladies are doing better than they think. And now I've been thinking, what if I'm doing better than I think?" It's a self-compassionate thought that is uncomfortable and true. And I've just been trying it on for size for the last 24 hours. Also, I am amazed at how much I learned about myself in listening yesterday. I'm very grateful for how people chose to share. I loved this woman's words, how she talked about being willing to have that same compassion for herself. And she was honest, that's a little bit uncomfortable sometimes. It's uncomfortable to feel like maybe I am doing better than I think that I am. What if I gave myself a little bit more compassion? Sometimes we feel that's uncomfortable because we're worried if we give ourselves an inch, we're going to take a mile. But I don't think that's true. This brave woman was having the courage to see her struggles as normal. She saw the struggles of the other woman and thought, of course they're struggling. It's totally normal. And look at the beautiful way they're responding. Look at their courage and their capacity. She saw the beauty, and she saw that they're doing better than they think they are. And maybe, just maybe, she's starting to have that same compassion for herself, permission to believe something different about herself too. You can have that same permission too. You can have space to believe that maybe you're doing better than you think that you're doing. Instead of resisting all the things you're doing wrong, having negative thoughts about yourself when you're struggling, to say, we're doing better than we think we are. Of course, we're going to feel this way. Of course, we're struggling. That phrase, of course, is one of my favorite tools. And I want to talk about it today because it can go one way or another. And I want to give you the gift of the of course that serves you. When something happens that you don't like and you say, of course, it's natural that this happened. It gives us a neutral energy, neutral space, so that then you can choose what you want to do next. My clients have found a lot of success using this with their kids. If you have children, think for a moment about one of those things that drives you crazy. Is it your son who always leaves his socks everywhere around the house? I have one of those. Or is it tattletelling that feels like nails on a chalkboard for you? Think of something right now that drives you crazy about something that a child does in your life. And if you don't have children, you can think of anyone who drives you crazy in some way or another, but it's really sticky with kids. So think of that child, and I want you to try on this thought. It makes sense that they are doing that. Just consider it for a minute. It makes sense that my son doesn't want to put away his socks. It takes effort to put away socks. He wants to run outside, and I told him not to run around with socks because it puts holes in them, so he'll just throw his socks out. That makes sense. He is trying to be obedient in that way. Or the child who is tattletelling. It makes sense that that child wants you to fix their problems for them. You've felt that way before. Of course, it's totally natural that they want that. That, of course, can be freeing because it cleans up a lot of that judgment, a lot of the resistance that we have when a behavior we don't like happens and we want to fight it and resist it and be upset about it. What if we neutralize it first and then say, okay, it makes sense that that's happening. Of course children don't want to do chores. Of course they fight sometimes. Didn't you when you were a kid? Of course they want to eat candy. Their brain is wired to want candy. It totally makes sense. Now, this is not an invitation to just let everything happen the way that it happens, and it's totally fine. But when we recognize it as natural, as normal, it gives you space to decide what to do next. One word of caution, you do have to be careful about the flip side of that coin. Sometimes when we practice, of course, we end up thinking in a victim state, like, well, of course, my car would break. Of course, my son would fight. He's the one who always is fighting. Of course, these socks are left here. He never picks them up. That's not the of course I'm inviting you to see. One of my clients recently got stuck in this trap. She had been trying out this tool in her life of saying, of course, when things happen she didn't like. Well, she lives in Idaho, and they have been getting a crazy amount of snow this season. And the other day, it finally got warm enough for the snow to melt a little. And when it started melting, she went downstairs and realized that it was flooding her basement. Something about the way that her foundation was sitting and the runoff was going, it was coming straight into her daughter's bedroom. And in that moment, she said, of course my basement is flooding right now. And I happened to have a call with her the next day, and she told me, of course. Well, I invited her to get curious in that moment by asking her this important question. How do you feel when you think, of course it's flooding? She paused for a moment and said, I feel resentful and I feel angry. In that moment, instead of telling her, well, you shouldn't feel resentful and angry, you're using of course wrong, I simply said this. Of course you feel resentful and angry. Of course you don't want to have your house flood and cost thousands of dollars for you to fix the flood and your foundation. No human wants to have that happen. It totally makes sense for you to have those feelings. In that moment, you could see her energy relax. She took a breath and said, okay, yes, of course. It's okay for me to feel this way. Then she got to decide what she wanted to do next to take care of herself, to help solve the problem, instead of running around feeling like a victim. When we respond to things that are negative with well, of course, we see the world through a negative lens, kind of a scarcity mentality that, of course, things are going to go wrong, right? And that's not helpful. How often do you think to yourself, well, when it rains, it pours. Of course, it's going to happen all negatively for me. It's natural as a human for us to want to do that, to respond to negativity with resistance, because we don't like the negativity. But my invitation for you today is to trade the, of course, victim with the empowering, of course, it's totally natural. You see the difference? When my client saw that difference, she gave herself space to feel. I found out later that after our call, she sat and just had a good cry. Just let all that energy out. It's okay that she was feeling that way. This felt overwhelming to her. And then she had space to remember truths. Truths about God helping her out up to this point and how He will open doors to make it okay. Truths that her feelings are beautiful and a gift to her to release the energy instead of something to be resisting or frustrated about. Space to choose what to do next. It was beautiful to watch that transformation for her, and I know that it's possible for you too. This trick works with kids. It works with that sister-in-law who keeps showing up the way that drives you crazy. Why can't she change? Why won't she do it differently? How about, of course she's going to keep doing what she's always done. That's who she's choosing to be. And you don't need to resist that. It's okay if she wants to show up that way. You get to choose how you want to show up. Do you want to keep just resisting her? You're mad about her showing up that way over and over again, but aren't you showing up that way over and over again when you resist it? What if we shifted it to, of course, that's natural for her. Now, what do you want to practice being natural for you? And if you don't have a sister-in-law that drives you crazy, it could be whatever comes up in your life that's unexpected. Of course, we live in a fallen world. It's natural for things to go wrong. And you can also hold space that things work out, that God has a plan for you, and that the world is for you, not against you. Of course there are ups and downs. It's for you to grow and lean on God and have that relationship with Him. It's totally fine. It's part of the process. Let's take this one step further and not just about our kids or our sister-in-law or the things around us. What about the things within us? What about those goals that we're working on that we want so badly to do perfectly? We set that goal and we want to do it every single day. We want to do it 100%. And then when we slip a little, what do? Ugh, I can't do this. I'm so terrible at this. Why can't I just show up? I did it again. Do you have that self-talk when you struggle with a goal? What if instead you said to yourself, of course I struggled. This is hard. I'm trying to change my behavior. I'm trying to do something new and build a new habit. Of course it's going to have its ups and downs. It's totally fine. How would you feel if that's how you responded to your struggles? Wouldn't you have more compassion, more self-love, that inner support? And then when you have that self-love, you have that compassion, wouldn't it be more motivating to want to show up next time for the goal? Because you know that you're not going to beat yourself up. When we know we're going to be mean to ourselves when we fail, we're afraid to even try. Of course you're going to struggle. Do you have your own back when you struggle? By letting that be part of the journey. Creating that space for humanity. Just like that woman shared with our group community. She saw the humanity of these other women. They were not telling the pretty parts of their story. They were sharing what they struggle with. And what did she see? She saw beauty. She saw learning. And her natural response was to think, they're doing better than they think that they are. You are doing better than you think that you are. And you can give yourself a little bit of permission to feel along the way when things don't go the way you want, and to accept your humanity, that you are going to struggle with some of it. It's okay. Of course. Now, here's another of course. Of course, your brain is also going to say, wait a minute, if I acknowledge my humanity, then I'm going to just sit on the couch and do nothing if I give myself permission to not do it well. If I give myself permission to be human and not do it perfectly. Well, let's consider it. Think of that scenario where two children are yelling at each other. They're fighting. And you think, of course they're going to yell. They're siblings, they struggle, they have that tension back and forth. I had that when I was little. This is totally normal. How would you feel in that moment if you believed that that was normal? Would you feel resistant and wanting to control it? Or would you feel a little bit more neutral and surrendered about it? I'm guessing you'd feel more neutral and surrendered. When you try and parent or help kids that are fighting, which emotion will be more useful to you? That fight, control emotion, or that neutral surrender? I promise you that the neutral surrender will actually give you more space. I also promise that those kiddos are going to be way more responsive to you if you're not trying to control them. They may stop and look at you in a little bit of awe and shock because they're used to you responding with that resistant emotion. Seriously, try it on. Say to your kids next time they're fighting, it totally makes sense that you guys are fighting right now. And see what it is that they say. See how they respond to you. Do a little experiment. Feel free to shoot me an email after, because I'd love to hear how it goes. Or maybe if you don't have kids, that sister-in-law. Think about it in that situation. Your brain might be saying, well, if I just say, of course she's going to show up that way, then nothing's going to ever change. Well, is she changing? Is her behavior different than the past? Probably not. But can you change how you experience it, how you show up, how you respond? And that's the only thing you truly have influence over, is your experience, not somebody else's actions. Using of course can unlock that for you. Give yourself the of course gift this week. Try it on. Think of something that you feel frustrated about right now and see if it works. One of the things I've been practicing this week is my self-compassion about my morning routine. It's something that I've struggled with a lot in the past, and I haven't struggled in a while, to be honest. But this past week, I've been sprinting. I've been doing a crazy ton of work for different projects that I'm working on, and I've been staying up later than normal. And a few days ago, I slept in the morning. I snoozed my alarm a few times, and that for me is behavior that I know puts me in a spin. And I was struggling. I was really beating myself up about it. And then I had this moment where I stopped and said, of course I wanted to sleep in. I am really tired. I have been doing so much lately that it makes sense why I wanted to sleep in. Now what do I want to do? Do I want to keep beating myself up and making myself emotionally tired so I want to sleep in again tomorrow? Or do I want to hold space and be kind to myself? You can have that space for yourself too. Whatever it is you're struggling with, give yourself the of course gift. And remember, you're doing better than you think you are. Have a blessed day, my friend. Keep shining. Are you getting my TLC Tuesday emails? They are filled with tips, insights, and invitations to help you add light to your life. Go to thelightcoach.com/subscribe and make sure you're included, because big things are coming and I don't want you to miss them. Together, we can create confidence, connection, and clarity in life after therapy.